What is a public intellectual and what responsibilities do they have, if any, at all?
Public intellectual is a relatively new concept. The term first appeared in the late 80s, I think 1989, in a book by Jacobi. The word intellectual, of course, precedes public intellectual by many, many, many centuries even, 200 centuries. In Russia there is intelligentsia, and so on. But the first time the term intellectual was used to designate a group of university-educated professors who specialize in sociology, public policy, and politics, and geopolitics. The first time it was designated this way was actually during the Dreyfus Trial. Dreyfus, to remind the viewers, was a Jewish officer in the French army who had been accused of espionage for Germany. The case against him was fabricated by the French military intelligence, his enemies there, who hated the fact that a Jew progressed to the level of an officer. So France divided in two. There was a group of people like Émile Zola and others who supported Dreyfus against the system, against the establishment, and a group of people who, anti-Semites, most of them, who vociferously supported the army. And so the term intellectuals was reserved for the traitors who supported Dreyfus. And so henceforth, intellectual came to be identified with someone who is anti-establishment, right? Who is a rebel, who is defiant, who supports lost causes, who espouses on the hidden characteristics of the establishment, including all kinds of conspiracies, etc., etc. And this stuck with us. Today, when we talk about an intellectual, we have this image of a university professor or non-professor, someone just in the public sphere, who says controversial things, right? Who is thought-provoking, who attacks the establishment, who exposes all kinds of hidden machinations, and so on and so forth. Now, public intellectual, as distinct from intellectual, is an intellectual, university professor or not, whose appeal is to the wider public, usually via mass media, and most recently via the internet. The responsibilities of a public intellectual, it's a very good question, because it depends where. According to Marxist theory, and later in communist countries, the role of the public intellectual was to translate the party ideology to the masses, to the peasants and the working class, to generate new ideas regarding social progress and so on and so forth, to disseminate them, and to some extent to supervise their implementation in a proper way. That was in Marxist communist countries. In the West, it's perceived, the roles and responsibilities are perceived to be, the public intellectual should disseminate ideas, so he is limited to ideas, not facts, not science. It's not a popularizer of science, for example. Okay. But he disseminates ideas in a way that is intelligible to the masses. And he does that without patronizing, without demagoguery, without falsifying, and without any political bent. It's supposed to be a neutral arbiter of ideas.
It's quite a constrained role then.
Very, actually. And in this sense, many people who are considered public intellectuals are actually not.
Okay.
They are ideologies. Yeah. They are, I don't know, politicians. They are perhaps scientists or social scientists and so on. But public intellectuals, they're not.
Okay.
If you look at, if you pick up 100 random public intellectuals, for example, on YouTube, you will be hard-pressed to find a single one.
Okay.
Most of them have a political bent or espouse a specific ideology, or frankly distort reality or facts, impose frameworks of interpretation which are highly biased, prejudiced, etc., etc. And this includes, for example, black intellectuals, okay. Feminist intellectuals. It includes professors who let's say, right-wing or left-wing. It's extremely difficult to find a public intellectual who is a neutral arbiter of ideas.
Okay.
Very.
So with these people who we're calling public intellectuals now, would they better be described as celebrities or celebrity intellectuals?
Actually, throughout history, most public intellectuals were celebrities. Start with Socrates. Socrates was very famous in the markets of Athens. During his trial, all of Athens followed. It was like court TV. His execution, and so on and so forth, was a public event. All intellectuals throughout history were usually very, very famous figures. So I wouldn't say that celebrity is a new status for intellectuals, but I would say that the last 20 years is the first time that intellectual work is subjected to celebrity.
Yeah.
In other words, usually it was like you engage in intellectual work. It was distinguished, it was formidable, it was thought-provoking, it was groundbreaking, and because of that you became famous, or become a celebrity.
Yeah.
Today the roles are reversed. You either first become a celebrity and then mysteriously you're transformed into a public intellectual. This is called the halo effect in psychology. Or you tailor your public message as an intellectual to cater to the widest possible audience so that you have the biggest number of views and the widest appeal, and you are as provocative as possible, and so on and so forth. So actually you subject your objectivity, your neutrality, your scientific ethics, you subject them to celebrity, to the goal of celebrity.
Excuse me. But based on what you defined as being a public intellectual, that, as you've said, I suppose, that neutralizes most of the people that we think of as public intellectuals.
Yes,
Therefore,
absolutely. There are extremely few public intellectuals. There are left-wing intellectuals, there are right-wing intellectuals, there are conservative, religious, but owing to these precedent labels, owing to these prefixes, they are not public intellectuals.
Are you surprised at all by the proliferation of the number of so-called public intellectuals and just how popular they've become in the last, it only seems to me to be the last 4 or 5 years?
I think the more disorientation there is, the more people feel disoriented, the more complex the world becomes, the more guidance they seek. And the aura of academe carries forth. So if you're a university professor, you're supposed to have privileged knowledge and so on and so forth. It's very interesting because there are two absolutely contradictory trends.
Okay.
On the one hand, there is a groundswell of anti-expertise, anti-intellectuals, anti-intellect.
Yeah.
That you see, for example, in Wikipedia, where experts are laughed off, chased away, and so on and so forth. I mean, if you try to contribute to Wikipedia and you say, well, I'm a professor in this subject, you'll be usually trolled and abused and bullied to the point that you will abandon the platform.
Really?
So Wikipedia is an example, and not the best, because lately they are becoming more and more moderated and so on. But generally on the internet, there is an anti-expertise movement. So for example, if you're a doctor and you espouse vaccines, you are probably bribed by the pharmaceutical companies. If you're a political scientist, even if you're a physicist, if you say the Earth is round, I mean, the Earth is flat. So there is an overwhelming hostile ambience and hostile atmosphere towards experts, scholars, professors, and so on the one hand. On the other hand, if you become a celebrity, you are then allowed to claim to be an expert or an intellectual. So, if you're just run-of-the-mill expert, you are suspect, you are just one voice of many, your truth is as good as anyone else's truth. I mean, you have no privileged position. And if you try to claim a privileged position, that means you are part of the establishment, and you support the mainstream, and you are falsifying, or you are sheeple, you are stupid, you don't realize what's happening, and so on and so forth. And there are even intellectuals who participate in this anti-expertise movement. For example, Chomsky. For example, Milton Friedman. They were anti-expertise. There's of course whole movements. For example, there's an anti-psychiatry movement,
Right.
which is, psychiatry is bullshit. It's
Yeah.
so there is a huge strand of anti-expertise. However, if you became a celebrity as an expert, or became a Michio Kaku, or became a celebrity as a public intellectual, Jordan Peterson, then it's okay. Not your expertise legitimizes your celebrity. Your celebrity legitimizes your expertise.
Right.
Celebrity first.
Yeah. And is this because the main platform that they're using is YouTube? So I don't want to be told the truth by an expert that I've never heard of, but if I recognize his face, I recognize his voice, that's okay. Is it as stupid as that?
That's known as the halo effect. Even if you're a footballer, you can express political opinions. And if you're a politician, probably have a lot to say about quantum mechanics and so on and so forth. It's called the halo effect. So if your face, face recognition, brand recognition, if your face is recognized, you can talk about almost anything. And indeed, if you isolate these celebrity, so-called public intellectuals, you would see that they never limit themselves to a specific field. So, for example, if you have a psychologist, celebrity public intellectual, he would not limit himself to personality disorders.
No.
He would talk about everything. He would talk about evolution. He would talk about religion. He would talk about Marxism. He would talk about physics even.
Yeah.
I mean, and the same with Michio Kaku, the aforementioned Michio Kaku. He's allegedly one of the founders of quantum string, string field theory. I will not go into it. But he's a physicist.
Yeah.
But you would find him arguing about God, which is a 4,000-year-old topic.
Yeah.
I mean, you need 40 years to get acquainted with it?
Yeah, yeah.
No, but he's arguing with theologians and so on about God. So everyone is, the minute you become a celebrity, that qualifies you to talk about everything, it's okay. So this is the inversion of our age. Celebrity first, and then everything else follows.
Okay.
Your expertise is a derivative of your celebrity, not the other way.
And I presume that this effect is why we have people who are celebrity intellectuals or faux public intellectuals talking about topics that probably they shouldn't and really confusing things.
Yes, it's far more than confusing. They are misguided. They spread misinformation. And consequently, they motivate huge groups of people because many of them have access to tens of millions of people.
Yeah.
I mean, they move mountains. They motivate groups of people to reach the wrong decisions, including politicians, including activists, grassroots activists, and so on and so forth. So yes, physicists talk about God, psychologists talk about evolution. I mean, all the boundaries are broken. It's as though celebrity is a form of expertise, like you said the other day. I mean, famous for being famous. Yeah. Like, if you qualified, if you became famous for being famous, that means that you are so special, so unique, that by virtue of this uniqueness, you must have instant insight to all fields of human knowledge.
Right.
It's almost, I would say, godlike. Like, you're as famous as God, so you must be God.
Yeah.
Kind of. And there's, of course, relative positioning. How many views? How many likes? How many... So it's very infantile and immature. And, of course, this would radicalize the public intellectual. Right. A public intellectual that says, it's good to be a good person would get 800 views on a good day. But a public intellectual that says, the mainstream media is part of the deep state and they intend to bring down independent voices like Donald Trump, that kind of public intellectual will get 800,000 views. Right. He has an inbuilt incentive to radicalize, to be extreme, to mislead, to prefer conspiracy theories, etc., etc. In other words, the relative coming back to social media, the relative positioning system, via likes, via ranking, via the algorithm of YouTube, which offers you videos based on videos that you've watched and related and so on. All these corrupt the intellectual, corrupt the public discourse, and render actually everything suspect.
So if you're in an environment like YouTube, that particular social medium rewards provocation, rewards clickbait titles, rewards, I don't know what it is, where you foster people going into their separate teams. What would you call
conflict,
it? Conflict. Yeah.
Tag teaming,
Yes.
conflict. Yes, these are adversarial systems. It's no wonder that these are American systems, because the American system of government, the American system, the American judiciary system is adversarial.
Right.
American system of government is checks and balances. Everyone fighting everyone.
Yeah.
President is fighting Congress, Congress is fighting the courts, etc. Same with the judiciary in America. It's an adversarial system. Consequently, American technology is adversarial, especially social media and so on. So conflict is encouraged at the expense of communication.
Yeah.
Opinions are encouraged at the expense of information.
Right.
Provocation is encouraged at the expense of truth, etc., etc.
Yeah.
This is absolute corruption of intellectual discourse,
Right.
in which all so-called public intellectuals today are participating eagerly, absolutely eagerly.
To that extent, I mean, we could say you can draw a direct line, a direct correlation between social media usage, in this case, by so-called public intellectuals, and the kind of political turmoil that we're witnessing and the confusion that's reaching us like a fever pitch, a hysteria, particularly around politics.
I would say that the politics is a part of this trend where celebrity overtakes qualifications. So you could have a celebrity as a president of the United States. You could have celebrity as a judge. You could have celebrity. So it seems that celebrity has taken over as the sole qualification. Everything else comes second. It's the philosophy of fake it till you make it. If you put your mind to it, it's narcissistic. If you put your mind to it, there's nothing you cannot do. You can do anything if you put your mind to it.
Yeah.
So that part is negligible.
Yeah.
Because all you have to do is put your mind to it.
Right.
Now the big problem is to be recognized.
Yeah.
Now that's an art.
Yeah.
There you have coaches, business coaches,
Yeah.
YouTube coaches. I mean, there you have a whole industry of how to be noticed, how to be recognized.
Totally different skill set, isn't it?
It's a different skill set, and for example, it's not analytic. To be recognized requires communicative skills, requires social skills, but not analytical skills.
Yeah.
Actually, in today's age, analytical skills are considered sometimes antisocial or asocial.
Yeah.
So, and of course, the public intellectual should be above all an intellect. He should be analytical.
Yeah.
He should offer ideas dissected, rearranged in a way that present both sides for your perusal and decision.
Right.
But public intellectuals never do this anymore.
I can't think of a single
Not
time
one.
I've ever witnessed that.
I agree, yeah. Not one. And this had been the role of public intellectuals well into the 60s. In France, for example, Raymond Aron, and I mean, they were all over the world. They were public intellectuals, and that's what they did. They presented to you, I mean, they had a position, and they said, I think it's like that, but they presented to you the whole panoply of possibilities, and like a menu, and they told you, I like this dish, but,
This is everything else is here.
there's everything else, these are the drinks, and so on.
It sounds a lot more healthy to me, because everything at the moment seems to be coming, like you can't speak without having your position set first, and you're not really allowed to say, well, I don't know. I'm willing to go this way, I'm willing to go that, let's debate, let's talk, and we'll see. No, you start with your position. I noticed that for about 3 or 4 years ago on YouTube, people would be saying, is this guy a liberal or is he, it's got nothing, it's a fucking video on psychology, who cares whether I'm a liberal or right wing, what difference does it make?
Yes, because confirmation bias, belonging to a silo, a thought silo, belonging to a bubble, being with like-minded people, fending off countervailing information and the intrusions of reality. And so these have become the main art form in online. And so anyone who threatens the status quo by claiming to know the truth, by offering possibilities and so on, is a problem and is chased away.
Yeah.
It's spoil sport. He crushes the party.
Yeah.
So he's chased away. But I think it's even more pernicious than that. We mentioned celebrity. We neglected to mention money. Money has an effect. Eyeballs in some cases, or selling products to your base,
Yeah.
or leveraging your base, for example, in seminars, and so the more traction you get, the more views and so on, I mean, the more money you make.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you have an incentive to radicalize and everything else I mentioned.
Yeah.
You have an incentive not to be truthful. Now, how can you do that? How can you not be truthful? So, that led to the abolition of truth.
Right.
So this is your truth and my truth. There's facts and alternative facts.
Right.
This is your opinion. That the Battle of Hastings happened in 1066, it's your opinion. I say, what do you mean opinion? Happened in 1066. Well, maybe. Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah. Let me look it up, Wikipedia. And in Wikipedia, I see it was 1066. I might agree with you. Problem with Wikipedia, of course, that any 17-year-old can change the date to 1966.
Yeah.
So it's a very fluid, shall we say gently, medium. And so there is a truthism. There is a situation where there's no truth. The French are guilty for that.
Really?
Yes, the French are guilty for everything.
Good. I like this conclusion.
And this as well. The French are guilty because they came up with the relativity of ideas. They came up with the relativity of text.
Yeah.
They said text hides underneath it subtext, which we can decipher by relativizing everything, by saying that even a fact is a choice.
Yeah.
And the choice, therefore,
Yeah.
is biased, prejudiced,
Yeah.
it's relative.
Yeah.
So,
Is it-
via deconstructivism and other similar theories, not only, via deconstructivism, Derrida and others, the French actually ruined, demolished the foundation of ontology. Like there is epistemology and ontology.
Yeah.
Ontology is what exists.
Yeah.
Epistemology is your thinking process.
Yeah.
So they said, no, there's no ontology. Ontology is a form of epistemology.
Right.
And they united the two. And that created havoc. And I also blame Albert Einstein. I blame him. I just regret that he was not French. But I have to blame him. Because
Perhaps that's an alternative fact. I remember him as being French. We can make him French in time. It's all relative.
we'll change the Wikipedia entry later.
Yes.
But he was the second worst. He was a Jew. So Albert Einstein was the first celebrity intellectual.
Right.
The first ever celebrity intellectual. He was a guy who dedicated as much attention to confetti parades and photo opportunities as he did to his science. He was utterly addicted to fame. He was granting interviews 2-3 a day. I mean, he was like total addict.
Right.
He established the movement. He was the first celebrity intellectual, and then other intellectuals kind of liked it. I mean, it's gratifying, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And why only Einstein looked much better, you know, and so they, which was not difficult. So they, you know, jumped on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
And it became a conflagration.
Yeah.
By the 60s, most public intellectuals were already celebrities, although as a second place, like they were first intellectuals, then celebrities.
Yeah.
But by the 80s and 90s, celebrities became intellectuals, not the other way. And that was it. That was too late already.
So what you were talking about before, that's it's postmodern thought, isn't it? This relativity of ideas.
Yes, it's part of postmodernism. Yeah.
And you said it ruined
Relativity of facts as well, not only of ideas.
Sorry.
Because fact is a choice.
Sorry. Relativity of facts, which is a strange concept. Just as an aside, personally, where do you stand on that? Do you like postmodern thought? Do you think it's useful?
Depends.
Okay.
Depends. That's my favorite word, by the way, when I don't know what to answer. But to your regret, I know what to answer. So, it really depends.
Yeah.
If you are deciphering, for example, you're deconstructing
Yeah.
a political text, it's
Yeah.
very useful.
Yes.
If you're deconstructing advertising,
Yeah.
it's very useful,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
advertising includes a call for action,
Yeah.
it includes an interpellation.
Yeah.
As Althusser called it interpellation. And the interpellation is hidden. Advertising will always kind of hide it. It might tell you, buy this car, but actually, they will put a naked blonde next to the car,
Yeah.
which is that's the real claim.
Yes, yeah.
So, when you deconstruct advertising, when you deconstruct political text, sociological
Yes.
text, anthropological text, journalistic text,
Yeah.
literary text, Deconstructivism is genius.
Yes.
It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you read the text one way,
Yeah.
and then Derrida comes and tells you, are you an idiot? Can't you see that these words provoke these associations? They're connected to this period, and actually they are sabotaging, they are telling you actually about the blacks that they are like this, and suddenly you see the text in a total.
Right.
But unfortunately, deconstructivism was applied to areas that it should not have been.
Right.
For example, it was applied to the philosophy of science. So you had people like Feyerabend and others, and they began to deconstruct scientific texts and so on. Like, science is also a choice. It's also a fashion. It's a fad.
Right.
It has hidden subtext and sub-subtext and I don't know what else.
Yeah.
It has denotates and connotates and so on, but it's not true. Science is a rigorous, pretty automatic method.
Yeah.
Human-free, I would say, method of gathering information, putting it in very well-defined, rigid structures like hypotheses and then theories, and then falsifying them.
Yeah.
It's really totally automated. Indeed, a lot of science today is made by computers, not by people.
Right.
There is no point to it's utterly counterproductive. It also yields wrong results when you deconstruct a scientific text.
Yeah.
Similarly, when you try to deconstruct, some types of college textbooks, as there was an attempt, some texts, and when we say text, by the way, it's not only text, it's images and so on. So some texts should never be deconstructed. And deconstructivism, among other movements, similar movements, went way too far.
This tendency towards deconstructivism, with this account for, there was an experience, I've had it a number of times where I'm talking to students around the age of 20, 21, and they've read a book, and they'll, whether it's a factual book or a fiction, they'll say, this was my interpretation of the book, and then I'll say, yes, and this is the author's interpretation of the book. And they see their interpretation as equal to the author's interpretation. And I always say, well, the person who wrote it is the person who gets to say ultimately what it's about. And they don't seem to feel that at all. Is that social constructionism that's done that, do you think?
It's something else, but it's very close to deconstructivism. Okay. This was first proposed by Ronald Barthes.
Right.
Ronald Barthes in 1980. He wrote a book called The Death of the Author.
Okay.
He said, a work of art, literature for example, it's utterly irrelevant what the author meant. What is relevant is the reactions it provokes in the reader. So he said that a work of art, there is no one copy of a work of art. You can read a book and then give it to me, and I'll read it, and we have read two different books. And the author cannot come as an arbiter and say, Richard Grennan is right. Wagner is right, Richard Grennan is wrong.
Yeah.
Because the author has no privileged position. That's just his view. And that's Ronald Barthes.
That's a really repellent idea.
Many authors find it slightly amusing. But yes.
But a lot of kids seem to be
not fully.
this.
It's not fully repellent because a text has two layers. So there is the textual layer, but there is also the resonance in the reader's mind.
Yes.
So only when they combine, you have the literary experience.
Sure.
So each resonance is different. Lee will have one kind of resonance, I will have one kind of resonance, and with your limitations, you'll have a third kind of resonance. So these, so we will have three different texts. That's pretty correct.
Yeah.
The author, though, where I disagree with Ronald Barthes, so I agree that we each generate a different text.
100%.
Where I disagree with Ronald Barthes is that when it comes to certain types, not all, certain types of textual interpretation, it's called hermeneutics, certain types of, there the author has privileged position. It's very similar to the Constitution of the United States.
Right.
When legal scholars try to interpret the Constitution, you have basically two camps.
Okay.
One camp is called the originalists or the literalists. They interpret the Constitution as the writers of the Constitution had meant. So they dig into diaries, they try to find all kinds of correspondence, and they read the Federalist Papers and say, when they wrote above, they meant above. Because they meant above, you know? So that's one approach.
Yeah.
Second approach is called activism, judicial activism. It says the text is text,
Yeah.
but it must be adapted to today's conditions, today's mindset, etc., etc. And even if somehow the modern interpretation contradicts the literal interpretation, the modern interpretation should prevail.
Right.
So it's exactly Ronald Barthes. Ronald Barthes says the text is not relevant.
Okay.
And a constitution is, of course, a text.
Yeah.
It's a text. It's the same. So this is, yes, it's part of postmodernism. It's not deconstructivism. It's part of postmodernism.
Okay.
And by the way, there's a similar approach to works of art. I mean, like plastic art. So there is a question of how to read paintings. That is applicable mostly to modern art.
Okay.
Modern art.
Yeah.
Because if you see a beautiful naked woman in a Rubens painting,
Yeah.
some parts of your anatomy would do the interpretation without higher intervention.
Right.
But if you see a red square on a white background, that is a bit problematic until you realize it's the hydrant. That's a bit problematic because what does it mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what does it mean? There are several possibilities. You can call the artist, excuse me, Mr. Artist, what the hell did you mean?
Yeah.
So what do you mean what I mean? I meant this, the red represents blood on the white fields of Finland in 1940.
Okay.
Let's assume.
Okay.
And then, according to Barthes and others, you can say, what is this nonsense? I don't see it like that. It represents the blood of virginity on white sheets.
Right.
And according to Barthes, the author has no privilege, the painter has no privileged possession.
Yeah.
Because he said, the work of art is a trigger. The art itself is generated in the viewer's, reader's mind. Okay, you ask me. You ask me, I answered.
Yeah.
Next time you ask me, I will not answer.
So some of these things, they can be good ideas, and then if they're taken like a very, very long way, or taken to areas, as you said earlier, where they don't belong, like science, that's when things start to fall down.
Yes, when we begin to deal with texts that apply to reality as we perceive it, to ontological entities, to objects, that is wrong to deconstruct.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, deconstructivism became arrogant. There was hubris to this very day.
Yes.
And they interpret everything.
Right.
They interpret Einstein's papers on photoelectric effect and so on. So Feyerabend, for example, is a book claiming that quantum mechanics, where you have particles all over, was developed in the 1920s and 30s because people were shooting in the streets of Germany. Because quantum mechanics in the 20s and 30s were developed mostly by German Jews.
Okay.
Not only, the non-Jews, but mostly by German Jews. So he said, you see, particles are shooting all over because in the streets of Germany, there was a lot of shooting.
Okay.
Cute. How does it contribute to the understanding of anything is beyond me.
Yeah.
But it's an example.
Right.
Where really you should not do it.
Yeah.
It's really.
It's going to make you look silly, and it's not going to add anything. Yeah.
Yes, a bit. Even if your name is Feyerabend, which is a name to be respected.
So, speaking of things going in the wrong place, is there any place for the public intellectual, or the so-called public intellectual, to be involved in politics?
Yes, all public intellectuals, and intellectual, because public intellectual is a new concept. Right. But intellectuals before them, all the intelligentsia, was always involved in politics. That's a primary concern of intellectuals.
Okay.
Intellectuals are political arbiters.
Okay.
So they must be involved in politics, public policy, public norms, applicability of norms to individuals, social units, institutions, geopolitics. Politics is the sphere of the public intellectual. Yeah. 99 out of 100 public intellectuals are essentially in politics, or deal with politics. But not in the way it's done today. Yeah. What you should do as a public intellectual when you deal with politics is not that you are not allowed to have an opinion. You are allowed to have an opinion. But what you should do is elucidate, enlighten.
Right.
In French, they used to call long time ago, I think 200 years ago maybe, they used to call intellectuals bourgeoisie éclairée. The bourgeoisie, the middle class of enlightened middle class. Okay. Enlightened bourgeoisie, enlightened middle class. Enlightened. Yeah. The aim of the public intellectual, and these were the intellectuals. Right. And for example, in Germany, at the same period, they used to call them Bildungsbürgertum.
Okay.
Do you know what is Bildungsbürgertum?
I have no idea what any of those words mean.
That's good.
Bourgeoisie
I should maintain the superiority. Absolutely.
Bourgeoisie eclair, I thought that was something to do with
Bourgeoisie eclair, some cookie.
Middle class people eating cakes.
Something cookies, yes. Eating cookies. I thought so. That's why I bothered to enlighten you. Yeah. Bildungsbürgertum means the citizenship of those who construct pictures. Bildungs is picture. But not only picture, it also means landscape or putting things together.
Okay.
Okay, so you have Bildungsroman. So Bildung is like putting things together in a kind of visual way.
Okay.
So the citizens who construct. So these two words actually give you the essence of public intellectual. The role of a public intellectual is to paint a painting, to paint for you, a canvas, a panorama of everything. He can say, he has full right to say, because he's human. Well, some of them are human, and they have right to say, listen, these are the solutions. I mean, 1 to 19. Yeah. I personally think that 17 and 19 are the best. Why I think? Because they have a right to an opinion, but not before. They have painted for you the total picture in a totally unbiased and unprejudiced way. Yeah. No one is doing this today.
No,
not a single one is doing this today. So yes, the answer is not only can they engage in politics and ideology, it is their moral obligation to engage in politics and ideology, but as educators, as arbiters, as guides. The Romans used to call such people vademecum. Do you know what is vademecum?
I don't.
I'm delighted. I'm absolutely delighted.
Will you tell me?
Don't rest a single word. That's very nice. Vade, come, mecum, with me.
Okay.
Come with me.
Okay.
That's what most police forces are using today. Vademecum. you vademecum, you fucker. So, educated policemen say that.
Yeah.
Other policemen say freeze. So, but really seriously, the Romans called them vademecum. Come with me. Come with me, I'll show you. I'll show you the agora, I'll show you the temples, I will show you the statues, I will show you. And then I will tell you, listen, my favorite is this palace, Palace Athena. That's my favorite. But first I will show you everything. So this is the public interest. He's a vademecum. Come with me. He has to take you by the hand and lead you and show you everything. Panorama of human knowledge, human opinion, human history, even in politics you have depth.
Yes.
I mean, you have. And of course, all ideologies are forms of philosophy. They're grounded in thousands, usually, of years. Yeah. Even the most recent ideologies are grounded in thousands of years. It is the role of the public intellectual to expose these roots. Yes. To tell you, listen, this ideology in the 19th century was like that, in the 17th was like that, in the 12th was like that. That's his role. His role is to familiarize the world to you. Okay. Make you familiar with the world. Make you at home in the world. And I always call public intellectuals the Gemütlichkeit, the ones who make you feel cozy in the world. Like the world is your oyster, you know. Because when you face a complex, ever-changing, shape-shifting world, it's frightening, it's disorienting. Intellectuals, public intellectuals, are anxiolytics, anti-anxiety medication. Right. They should reduce your anxiety. Yeah. I mean, you come, what's going on here? I don't understand what's happened. Yeah. Sit down. It's not the first time it's happening. Yeah. It happened before in the 1940s, and then this is what happened, nothing. Then it happened in 1920, it was bad, but after 7 years it was okay. I mean, they should calm you down. Yes. Should reduce your anxiety. Yeah. Today, public intellectuals, because they're first celebrities, concerned with views, concerned with money, concerned with, they do exactly opposite. Yeah. They enhance your anxiety. Because the more anxious you are, the more sticky you are, more the stickiness. Yes. Then I make you anxious, you will come back again to see what the comments are. What am I saying in my next video? I mean, anxiety creates conditioning. Yeah. We know. Yeah. Pavlov's experiments with dogs created anxiety in the dog. Yeah. The bell is ringing. Where's my anti-anxiety medication? Yeah. So I say that intellectuals betrayed the masses. Betrayed the masses on 3 levels. First of all, they enhance anxiety rather than reduce anxiety. They made the world less familiar, not more familiar.
Yes.
And they do it on purpose. They make it less familiar, not more. They appear to be popularizing it, but actually there are hidden messages. That's deconstructivism.
Right.
There are hidden messages which make it less familiar and make the masses dependent on the public intellectual.
Right.
Like, you have to, it's kind of dictatorial, authoritarian.
Yes.
Suspend your judgment, I'll take over.
Yes.
You can rely on me. I'm genius. I'm public intellectual. You can leave it to me. That's first betrayal.
Right.
Second betrayal, dissemination, knowingly, dissemination of misinformation, misguidance, disinformation, and so on. That's egregious. It's very bad. The third betrayal, there's 3. The third betrayal, it's the role of public intellectuals to be gatekeepers.
Right.
What does it mean, gatekeeper? Gatekeeper simply filters out trash.
Okay.
And maintains quality. Quality standards, quality control. Make sure the content is correct, ontologically correct, the facts are facts. Battle of Hastings is 1066.
Yeah.
By the way, is it? 1066 and not any other year. Yeah. So, and finally, gatekeeper guarantees discoverability. Yeah. He ranks. Yeah. He says, in this field, the best book is this. Okay. Second best is this, etc. So he provides you with 3 services. Quality, so he filters out trash. Discoverability, tells you which is best, which is not so good. And he guarantees the reliability of the information you're getting. Okay. All public intellectuals abdicated and abrogated these responsibilities. Yeah. They no longer guarantee quality. Actually, they increase trash. They generate trash. They must disguise trash as quality. Yeah. The absolute betrayal in this field. They disseminate knowingly when it fits them disinformation, misinformation, misguidance. For example, conservative public intellectuals in the United States. And finally, they do not provide ranking algorithms or rankings so that you know what is best, what is not, because today everything is equal, malignant egalitarianism. Yes. Yeah. I mean, who are you to tell me that this book, I read the second book, is much better than the first book. But excuse me, I'm the cardiologist. So, second book is better than the first. Let's vote. Let's vote. So, there's a betrayal by the, now, I think people, the crowd online are children. The children. They feel abandoned by their parents. Yeah. They feel abandoned. Yeah. I mean, never mind. They're happy. Of course they're happy. They open the cupboards. There are candy. There's candy. There is snacks. They are celebrating. They are smoking weed. I mean, everyone is happy. 9-year-olds are smoking weed. So the kids are happy when they're left alone, home alone. Yeah. Home alone 1, 2, and 3. I mean, they're happy. Yeah. They do anything, you know. But gradually, it begins to induce anxiety. Right. Where's mommy and daddy? Yeah. I mean, it's already dark. What am I going to do? Yeah. I mean, I think we're at this stage. Okay. We're at the stage where we celebrated. Yeah. We consumed all the candy, smoked all the weed. Yeah. And played with father's laptop. Yeah. And now where are the parents? What's going on? Why are they not coming back? Why did they leave us alone in the dark? And who is knocking at the door? Should I open it? I mean, there's massive anxiety today. Into this anxiety, fake, public intellectuals are tapping. They're tapping into this anxiety. Yes. And they are not saying, don't be anxious. Yeah. I will familiarize the world to you. Yeah. I will familiarize the house to you. Yes. And I will make you less anxious. I will enlighten you. Less anxious, but they're not saying this. Yeah. They're saying, listen, the world is really a hostile place. Yeah. It's really frightening. You are right to be frightened, you bad 9-year-old weed-smoking piece of shit. You're right to be frightened. But I know the answers. Right. I know everything. You just have to stick with me. I'll guide you. Yeah. And follow everything I'm saying, but everything. Because if you don't follow one of the 2,363 rules, the rest, I mean, it's a unity. Of course, each rule is $5. So, pay me, buy my products, read my books, etc. Yeah. All based on enhancing anxiety. So they are not real intellectuals, they are faux intellectuals, fake intellectuals, who are leveraging and abusing the anxiety.
Yes. Into this space, well, what would you call somebody who, into this space, not only abrogated their responsibilities as public intellectual, but launched their own ideology?
There's nothing wrong in launching an ideology. For example, Sam Vaknin is a genius. That's an ideology. It's also a fact. So in this case, I'm not misleading the public.
Telling the truth.
But it should make you anxious that I'm a genius. Now, nothing wrong in launching ideology. Really. Nothing wrong in having an opinion. It's not that public intellectuals should be deaf, dumb, and blind. Or should be machine-like, because listen, if it's only knowledge, there's Wikipedia or whatever, Britannica.
You shouldn't just be spewing facts.
Yeah, it's not a fact check, the famous website. It's not this. It's not. You have Britannica. You don't need that. On the contrary, they should offer you facts in a structured way, so that it provides an organizing explanatory principle. Which will then make you feel that you're at home in the world. They should make the world intelligible. Now, one way of making the world intelligible is ideology. It's one way. So there are very bad ideologies. The world is as it is because the Jews control it. That's an ideology. It's called anti-Semitism or Nazism in German. That's a bad ideology. But it still provides an explanatory principle. That's why it's so attractive. That's why it attracted tens of millions of people all over the world. It has explanatory power, organizing power, and so on. Today, Illuminati. So some ideologies are conspiracy-minded. And these are, immediately, these are bad ideologies. But some ideologies are not. For example, science is good because it leads to technology and to the progress of the human mind, or human species. That's an ideology, of course. It's not a scientific statement, it's not a historical statement, it's not an ontological statement, no one can test it. How do we know it's good? Actually, if you look back 100 years, not so sure. Nuclear weapons, this, that. I don't know. I'm not so sure about this. But this is the ideology. We have a ideology of science. Similarly, democracy is a good system, better than any other. It's ideology. Absolute ideology. I think it sucks. I think it's absolutely the most idiotic system ever invented. And leads to disasters, mega disasters. Like, for example, Adolf Hitler, who was elected 3 times. In a democracy. Not to mention Donald Trump. So I don't think democracy is a good idea, but there is an ideology of democracy. Similarly, capitalism, an ideology and so on. So an intellectual can come and say, listen, I have an explanatory organizational principle that makes sense of the world, makes it familiar to you, makes you feel at home, but also calls for action, because all ideologies call for action. Capitalism, make money. Science, do research. And that's legitimate, absolutely legitimate role of the public intellectual. But here's the problem, here's the caveat. As long as he identifies it as ideology and not pretends that it is science or that it is philosophy or that it is history. As long as he says, listen guys, this is my ideology, that's my opinion. It's my opinion. It's my ideology. It's not science. So, for example, if you say, I don't know, women are essentially identical to men. There is such ideology, by the way, and it is today the prevailing thinking in most academic institutions in many countries, including the United States. Women essentially identical to men. They're minor, difference here. Is this science? No. Absolutely not science. Although there are many books that espouse it, written by academics and so on, it is not science. However, it is masquerading as science. It is essentially pseudoscience. Many pseudosciences masquerade as science. They are actually ideologies. So, for example, Marxism. Marxism presented itself as a science, the science of economics. They discovered the laws of economics. There are stages, 1, 2, 3. Marx presented his work as science. So did Sigmund Freud with psychoanalysis. He said, I discovered the science of the mind. These are not sciences. So these intellectuals were misleading. They misled.
Because Marx and Freud were at a similar time, did science have a looser meaning back then? Did it mean a system, or did it meant science?
No, if anything, it has a stricter meaning.
Really? So So they did literally present ideology as...
They they aggrandized. I mean, it was self-aggrandizement. It was, I discovered the principles of economics. I discovered principles of mind.
Yeah.
You know. They aggrandized themselves. It was self-aggrandizing and also presumptuous. And frankly, in the case of Freud, for example, he wanted grants. He wanted money.
Right.
Freud should have known much better because he was a neurologist.
Yeah.
I mean, if he was, I don't know,
Yeah.
philosopher, but he was a neurologist. He knew damn well what he was doing.
Yeah.
Marx, not so much. Marx was not, to start with, glorified economy. I mean, Marx, okay, Marx. But if you read the text, they are presented like laws of nature, like,
Yes.
and so on.
Yes.
It's wrong, it's not.
Yeah.
So what are they? What is psychoanalysis? It's a literary text
Yeah.
containing massive ideological elements.
Yes.
What ideology? Middle class in Vienna, bourgeoisie.
Yeah.
Middle class in Vienna in the 19th century, with sexual repression,
Yeah.
with middle class mores, with
Yes.
do's and don'ts of the middle class. What is Marxism? Marxism is the belief that ultimately capitalism carries its own seeds of death.
Yes.
It implodes.
Yes.
That's an ideology. It's not a science. Why? Why is it not a science? Because we've never seen a capitalistic system die yet.
Yeah.
Maybe in 2,000 years it'll be a science.
Yeah.
Right now it's not.
Yeah.
We haven't seen. We have enough time simply. Capitalism is like technically 500, 600, 700 years old, depending where you want to start. It's too short. So we never saw a system die.
So are you saying with both the core of Marxism and the core of what Freud is known for, which is psychoanalysis, they can't be science because they're actually very culture bound, they're very much about the time and the place, because Marx came up with that in London, didn't he?
There was a rise in the late 19th century and well into the 20th century, a rise of disciplines,
Right.
psychology, sociology,
Yeah.
the soft sciences,
Yeah.
economics.
Yeah.
These disciplines insisted to be considered science.
Right.
Because the science guys have white coats,
Yeah.
which women find irresistible. So how they squared the circle? They introduced mathematics.
Right.
If it's mathematics, it's science. Never mind that in mathematics it's utter rubbish.
Yeah.
Mathematics is a language.
Yeah.
I can say in mathematics is very correcting, but also total nonsense.
Right.
So suddenly economics, starting in the 1940s, after Keynes, became suddenly, I mean, up until then was text. Suddenly became totally mathematical. Chicago School and so on. Totally mathematical.
Yeah.
If you don't know high mathematics, you cannot study economics. Same with psychology. Psychology used to be text, exclusive text.
Yeah.
And suddenly there was this experimental psychology and like experimental physics. Same. Physics deals with bodies like the sun. Here's one good thing about the sun. It doesn't change. Well, at least not in a year.
Yeah.
It's absolutely the same. It's identical. Here's one bad thing about Richard Grannon. He changes every 5 minutes.
Right.
So how can psychology be a science?
Yeah.
How can psychology be a science? Even if Richard Grannon sits still, which is, I never saw him do, but okay, even if he sits still,
Yeah. Still thinking.
I'm still changing
Yeah.
dynamics.
Yeah.
The light is coming, Wagner is shouting. I mean, everything is changing. So there are many, so all these people try to be suddenly scientists, you know, because it was vogue, it was chic, it was in fashion, bon ton.
As an aside, do you think psychology would benefit from dropping the pretense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Really?
One of the best psychologists ever, by far, is Dostoevsky.
Right.
And I mean by far. Comparable only to Freud. No other comes close to it. Not Jung, not Schmung. I mean, comparable only to Freud.
Obviously, I'm not saying no scientific method in an experiment. Yes, of course.
Listen, it's good to observe people.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah,
nice, and you can learn a few things.
Yeah.
Not underestimating observations of people, like we observe, I don't know, monkeys, or we observe animals.
Yes.
So it's good to observe people, and you can learn a few things. For example, you can learn that most people, given the chance, will cheat.
Right.
That's done Ariely.
Yeah.
Ariely conducted experiments. Most people, given the chance, will cheat. By the way, most people.
Yeah.
I mean, like 90%.
Yeah.
Given the chance, will cheat.
Yeah. You mean in a game or?
Yeah, they put them in a situation where they could cheat or not cheat.
Yes.
And then left the room. They cheated.
If it's monopoly.
Everyone cheated. Everyone cheated. Moral, not moral. Everyone cheated. So that's useful. Useful knowledge.
Yeah.
My grandmother, before she died, told me the same. So it might have saved a few taxpayers' dollars. But still, my grandmother is my grandmother, and Ariely looks different.
Right.
I can't say better because he had an accident, but he looks different to my grandmother.
Yeah.
So We derive some benefit.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And similar experiments. I'm not saying it's totally useless. Don't misunderstand me.
Yeah.
It's not a science. It's an observational thing. I don't know. It's like, I don't know what to call it. I call it literature. Literature observes people.
Yeah.
Documents their actions and their motivation.
Yeah.
Speculates about their motivation, documents their actions. That's literature. Literature can be written in a flowery, amazing, multi-layered language, like Dostoevsky,
Yeah.
or can be written as a dry, totally boring and interesting text, like most articles in psychology.
Like the DSM.
Like the DSM. By the way, Freud is much closer to Dostoevsky because his work is absolute, stunning literature.
Right.
I mean, it reads like literature. It's beautiful. It's like a novel. So Freud was a very gifted author.
I'm going to try. I'm going to misquote you now.
What's new? You always misquote.
In an Instagram post, you wrote, I think you described psychology as a glorified literary exercise. Is that right? Is that something you'd say?
Yes, I think psychology is a branch of literature and economics is a branch of psychology, etc., etc.
Okay.
Yes, I think they are. I think all these. All these should be subsumed as they used to be in philosophy. To this very day, in the majority of countries in the world, there's no separate faculty of psychology.
Right.
Majority.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Psychology is part of the faculty of philosophy. For example, where I teach. I'm teaching in Rostov University in Russia.
Yes.
In Russia, psychology is part of philosophy.
Yeah.
So in the Balkans is the same.
Yeah.
China is the same.
Yeah.
There's no separate department.
Okay.
True. That's how it should be.
Yeah. Just put it back as a branch
Put it
of
back.
philosophy.
Absolutely put it back.
Yeah.
Economics is the same. There are economic texts written by Aristoteles. Economics is the same.
Yeah.
It's the observation of how people behave, but with money or goods, so with value.
Yeah.
How they behave with value, but still observations.
So you mentioned money and marketing and followers and likes and Freud's desire for grants. Do you think he ever wrote or suggested a hypothesis that he knew would be controversial just to sell books and sell seminars?
No, I don't. He had a very high integrity. For example, when he published his trilogy of works about religion, Totem and Taboo, Moses, and so on, it was exceedingly unpopular. I mean, like...
I've read. I know in the Moses one, he was derided as a conspiracy theory.
Moses and Akhenaton, and everyone was like all over him, and no one bought the books.
Yeah.
And there were, I think, Moses sold 800 copies, and no one bought the books, and he was essentially boycotted.
Yeah.
But he persevered.
Yeah.
The trilogies, I think, over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Right. Like he persevered. He didn't cut it off. No, Freud is an example of a public intellectual of that period.
Okay, and you think he had
Who is not
integrity?
hankering after popularity, absolutely not. He would say what he has to say. Popular, sometimes not popular.
Do you think that Moses was Akhenaton?
He didn't say Moses was Akhenaton. He said Moses was Egyptian prince
Right.
during the period of Akhenaton,
Okay.
who was king,
Yeah.
very young king, and Akhenaton abolished polytheism.
Yes.
He abolished the worship of many gods in Egypt and said that everyone should only worship the god of the sun, Aton. He also destroyed the temples of Amun-Ra, which was the greatest goddess like Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So he destroyed the temples and so on. Consequently, when he died, the priests of Amun-Ra, destroyed, erased his name from all the stelas and all the pyramids and all this. So that's why we almost did not know about him.
Yeah.
So what Freud is saying is that Moses was a prince who was exposed to the influence of Akhenaton.
Okay.
And when Akhenaton, and he was in the kind of in the administration of Akhenaton. And when Akhenaton died, relatively young, Moses was out of favor.
Right.
So he collected the slaves and he exited Egypt,
Yeah.
bringing with him monotheism. That's the thesis of what's his name, of Freud.
It's not that outrageous. Is it? I actually genuinely thought that Freud was suggesting that Akhenaton and Moses
No,
were the same person. So that's not that outrageous.
It's okay. Like first of all, Moses is really an Egyptian name. Moses.
Oh, okay.
It's Egyptian name.
Oh, okay.
Not Jewish, not Hebrew name. It's totally Egyptian.
So he definitely was raised Egyptian.
He was raised Egyptian.
Yeah.
The Bible says that he was born put in, because there was a decree to kill all Jewish firstborn,
Yes.
which happens every 2 years as far as as the scriptures. So his family took him and put him in a kind of a cradle.
Which mirrors another story, doesn't it? Wasn't there another kid who was put in a cradle and then he went
Yes.
in the river? And
By the way, in quite a few religions, Zoroastrianism.
is it really?
Yeah. So, and then he was drifted, and then the daughter of Pharaoh
Yeah.
found him
Right.
and adopted him. So the Bible itself says he was Egyptian.
Yes.
I mean, an Egyptian prince.
Yeah.
Because daughter of Pharaoh, he was an Egyptian prince.
Yeah.
There, Freud agrees with the Bible.
Okay.
He just speculates later that he was exposed, that this happened during Akhenaten. Although the Bible says differently.
Yeah.
The Bible says it happened during Ramses,
Yeah.
another king, another pharaoh. So there's a disagreement between Freud and the Bible. And of course, Freud should be respected. I mean, what's the Bible? And minor issue, minor adjustment.
When it comes to public intellectuals and the desire for fame, because they know that that's what's going to have an effect, do you think they can ever in their activities tip over into something bordering on I wouldn't say con artistry, but where they're being so fake just to get what they want that they're playing a dangerous game?
Most of the time.
Most of the public intellectuals, most of the time.
All the videos I watched are like that.
Right and left.
Right and many of them are not right or left. For example, physics videos, or I don't know, or let's say someone like Jordan Peterson who insists that he's not right or left.
Yeah.
But most videos that I've watched, without naming names and shaming shames, most of them are like that. They are meticulously, and I would say even expertly, I strongly suspect there are advisors behind them,
Yeah.
tailored to cater to the widest denominator, the greatest common taste, and to flatter the viewer and and cater to his grandiose need to be considered special, in the know, privileged, and absolutely, they are all absolutely tailored for this.
Right.
Not all, I'm exaggerating, but where you don't find this is with public intellectuals whose viewership is more limited.
Right.
So, but when you have public intellectuals with 100 million followers and so on, I mean, they have to.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, you're sacrificing $50,000.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Just by changing imperceptibly, injecting some words and so on, you make another $50,000. Very tempting.
Oh, and when you say $50,000 there, I would be sacrificing $50,000. You mean $50,000 a week? You don't mean a year?
Sometimes a week, sometimes.
It's huge money.
It's a lot of money. I mean, it's very tempting. It's irresistible, I would say. Don't forget that most of these people started off as poor people, professors.
Yeah.
They have the mini salaries. Professors don't make money.
Yeah.
And they're very poor people.
Yeah.
They have sandals and they ride on buses.
Yeah.
Some contraption I heard of. I mean, they're poor people.
Yeah.
And suddenly, they make $80,000 a week.
Yeah.
From YouTube advertising or Patreon, and they go crazy. They lose it.
They change. Yeah.
They lose it. Absolutely lose it. It's like winning the lottery.
Seeing as we're on that subject, do you think there is much stock in the notion of a context-based narcissism or context-based personality disorder, where you can become very wealthy, very famous too quickly, and it does something to the mind?
Yeah, actually, the technical term is not context-based. It's the correct term is acquired situational narcissism.
Right.
It was first described many decades ago. There was a study of people who became suddenly rock stars.
Right.
And they were administered narcissism tests.
Yeah.
Throughout their ascendance.
Okay.
So they became like municipal rock stars, and
Yeah.
The guy caught them, the professor, I forgot his name, Millman.
Millman did some interesting work.
Yeah,
Didn't he?
Millman. He started to interview them when they were at the beginning of their careers, the bottom of their career,
Yeah.
but already identifiable, like already, in the neighborhood kids,
Yeah.
and traced their ascendance to the top.
Yeah.
And their scores, narcissism scores,
Yeah.
shot together with their career.
Wow.
And collapsed after they fell out of favor.
Okay.
So he coined the term acquired situational narcissism. So yes, of course, there is merit to that. Absolutely, it's a well-established thing.
And you would say that some very popular public intellectuals may also be suffering from this quiet situation.
It's easy to be a narcissist. You're fawned upon, you're admired, you are, it's easy.
Yeah.
It's, I'm not angry or critical even.
Yeah.
I understand the temptation. Listen, you are if you're a professor at a typical university in the West, and you are extremely lucky and with 10 years of tenure, you would be usually making $150,000. Right. And another 10 years, you can end your career with $250,000 a year.
Yeah.
Before tax. After tax, I don't know, 100,000.
Yeah.
So, and here you go and become a celebrity, public intellectual, you can easily make $20,000, $30,000 a month.
Yeah.
And some of them make $250,000 a month.
Yeah.
A month.
Wow.
I mean, it shatters your mind. It's psychedelic.
Yes.
It's absolutely psychedelic.
Yeah.
You know? And then you're exposed to 20 million people who are like, and it's irresistible. It's the changes. I don't think can be counted. There's no way to vaccinate, to immunize these people against such reactions.
Sure. Are there any public intellectuals who you have particular admiration for that you follow, that you enjoy the YouTube videos of?
My problem with most of them is that they dumb down.
Right.
They dumb down. Now, a public intellectual should simplify.
Yeah.
It is the role of the public intellectual to educate, to enlighten, to bring the masses to the ideas and the ideas to the masses. And many ideas are very complex. So you need to simplify.
Yeah.
Not only to simplify, you need to structure. As A leads to B, B leads to C, and C leads to Samvagni. So you need to structure and you need to simplify. But they go beyond that. They don't simplify, they dumb down. They, for example, absolutely limit their vocabulary to 800 words.
Yeah.
You know, you can see that they're limiting to 800 words. They would skip. They would say A leads to Q.
Yeah.
They would not bother with B, C, D. Or they would give sweeping statements like throughout the generations, which is wrong to do.
Yeah.
Or they would do something called non sequitur. Non sequitur. Do you know what is non sequitur? You see? Okay. Non sequitur means they would draw wrong conclusion from right premises.
Right.
So the fallacies, many logical fallacies, and so on. But intentional, because it's much easier to understand logical fallacy, ironically.
Oh, I see.
Or they would engage in ad hominem. They would attack personalities, not argument, etc.
Yeah.
They would become part of the masses, not leader of the masses.
Right.
They would reflect the mass. They would become like a blank screen on which the mass can project anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is what the marketing books tell you to
Yes,
do. I mean, this
exactly.
is what you're describing as marketing.
Of course, internet marketing, of course. Yeah. So, I didn't come across, except Slavoj Žižek, I didn't come across any honest public intellectual.
Okay. So he's the, do you think the one honest?
I also admire him because he has unfathomable depth.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is endless depth.
Yeah.
And mind you, he's limited in his spheres of knowledge.
Yeah.
I wouldn't consult him on nuclear physics.
No.
He's limited on his spheres,
Yeah.
but he admits his limitations.
Yeah.
He would not talk about nuclear physics.
Yeah.
He would talk only about his fields.
Yes.
And in his fields, his depth is enormous.
Yeah.
His erudition is unparalleled.
Frightening.
And his honesty and integrity are unequaled.
Yeah.
And he doesn't dumb down. He does not dumb down.
That's true.
He talks, I mean, he wants to say a complicated $5 word, he will say a complicated $5 word, and the hell with the audience, you know. So, he's the only public intellectual I admire.
Okay.
If you ask about admiration, I have admiration for Slavoj Žižek. He's old school, because I think he was isolated behind, I mean, he grew up in Yugoslavia.
Yes.
Which was different culture, different, it was a bubble. It was, so Yugoslavia was not that open to Western, so he's Yugoslav.
Right.
He is not American. He's not. The corruption that started in France and spread to the United States and so on didn't reach at the time Yugoslavia. It was well educated. That's the kind of education where they teach you how many sheep there are in New Zealand. not only how to count them, but how many are. So he has this depth.
Yeah.
Today in the education system in the West, they tell you, what does it matter, knowledge? What does it matter, facts?
Yeah.
Why we need to memorize facts? It's idiotic. We need to learn how to find them, not how to memorize. We don't need to memorize them. We need to learn how to find them.
Right.
Yes, but what do you do with them when you find them? Knowledge is not information. Knowledge is structured information. And the structure contains context, contains antecedents, contains many things.
Yeah.
And they don't teach knowledge anymore. They don't teach information even anymore. They teach tools.
Speaking of Slavoj, listening to him sometimes, he is, as you say, very honest, to the point of if he feels pessimistic about a situation, he will just say, and it can be shocking to hear. Do you think public intellectuals like him have a responsibility to try and comfort people, or do you think they should just give us the truth?
Just the truth. On this I'm unequivocal. Just the truth. One need not be brutal about it.
Yeah.
One need not be sadistic about it. Yeah. Some public intellectuals, and to a very minor degree, for example, myself, I'm serious now.
Yeah.
I'm not, Slavoj Žižek, but whenever I am too brutal and I'm too sadistic, I enjoy telling you the truth. You have cancer and you're going to die in 3 weeks. This kind of thing. That's not good.
Yeah.
Because it it's not absorbed, yields no action. People put up resistances to this kind of truth.
Yes. Yeah.
So the truth must be administered gently, but never anything but the truth.
Yeah.
Never. And unfortunately, this is also a pitfall of current public intellectuals. They will dip the truth in so much syrup it drowns.
Yeah.
And it need not be. Ironically, if he had a vocabulary larger than 400 words, or 200 lately, he might have been considered an iconoclastic public intellectual.
I've heard you say this about Donald Trump many times, that you...
Yeah, I'm not an admirer.
I know you're not.
I was the first to suggest in early 2016 that the man is a total psychopathic narcissist.
Yes.
Let it be clear.
Yes.
However, his messages, had they been more erudite, more vocabulary steeped, and so on, are sufficiently iconoclastic to merit close attention. For example, his attack on political correctness.
Yeah.
Political correctness is what Herbert Marcuse called a kind of repressive tolerance. Herbert Marcuse called it repressive tolerance.
Okay.
Like, if you're politically correct, you're not tolerant.
Yeah.
You're repressive.
Yes.
Donald Trump is attacking political correctness all the time. But he's attacking it like a bull and like a bully.
Okay.
Because he's a very low-level person. He's a kind of, peasant.
Yeah.
And, but had he been Obama style, had he been much more cerebral and sophisticated and smooth, actually, many of his arguments fit well with a proper public intellectual. I know it's a bit shocking to hear.
Because I've heard you say it a number of times, the word Donald Trump and then intellectual. But also elsewhere, I think in another conversation we had, and I only caught it on the playback, you described him as, you think he's an intelligent man.
He has versatile intelligence.
Right.
In the sense that he applies his intelligence to a variety of disciplines and vocations. And succeeds in all of them, whatever you say, whatever we say.
Yeah.
All of them is a success. So his intelligence is very versatile. People describe him 20 years ago as bordering on genius. People who would work with him and who hate his guts and who publish criticism of him.
They still say 20 years
They say
ago.
20 years ago he was a genius, now he's an idiot.
Because we have established, haven't we, that there seems to be a change in him in the last 20 years.
Yes.
But at one time he was a very...
But if you look at his biography, it would have been difficult for a non-intelligent man to do this. Even the con artistry, even the, cutting corners.
Sure.
Even that would require some intelligence.
The common counter to this that I've read time and again online is actually he's a hugely failed businessman. He owes money out here, there and everywhere, and he's failed. How would you reply to that?
I would reply to that I would adopt such failure any day. That's how I would reply. No, seriously, come on.
Yeah.
Of course he failed. Who doesn't fail?
Yeah.
I mean, Well over 90% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. It's this is the statistic. So yeah, he failed. Failed here, failed there. I don't know. He's president of the United States. He's a big private jet. He has an even more beautiful wife. I mean, allow me to fail that way on a regular basis. I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump. And as he is now, he's a prime example of Alzheimer at its worst. Zero memory, zero vocabulary, zero analytical skill, zero reasoning argument. The guy is a cretin, a moron. But people who are now criticizing him as someone having a mental illness or retardation even, so they are not friends. People who have written books, for example, this black advisor, a woman, she was his advisor for black affairs.
Okay.
So she wrote a book about the White House. She said, this guy has mental illness. I mean, he's totally retarded and so on.
Yeah.
But she also said, when I worked with him 20 years ago, he was a genius. So she's not suspect.
And you said this woman particularly is a very intelligent woman, and you would trust her analysis.
First of all, I would trust her. Second of all, she's an enemy, clearly.
Right.
I mean, why would she say 20 years ago he was a genius?
Yeah.
Gratuitously.
Yeah.
She worked with him on The Apprentice. So she was a genius. Yeah. First of all, she said his vocabulary was enormous. Yeah. Can you believe this? In the book, I read the book. She said he had enormous vocabulary. And he was the most persuasive and amazing leader and this and that. And then she says, but now he is retarded, moron. I mean, should be, impeached because he's mentally ill. I mean, so she's not suspect. She's not like a adulator. Yeah. So listen, people change. He's 70-something. People change. Sure. They're in their 40s or 50s. Yeah. They could be geniuses. Yeah. And 10 years later, Donald Trump.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Sam.